Welcome everybody. This is going to be an overview on the evidence for evolution. There are many people, or some people, who would question the validity of this topic, so it's important for yourselves to know the concrete reasons why evolution is a fact. The first thing that people naturally think about is natural selection, or survival of the fittest. This is a logical idea, and it does explain genetic selection, but is not really a proof per se. So without further ado, let's get to the first point, which is fossils. Fossils are studied by paleontologists, the studiers of prehistoric life. They try to unravel our past by digging up these fossils out of the strata of the earth. Strata are just basically different layers of the earth from different time periods. These are able to give us valuable clues as to what happened in our history. The oldest fossils are buried deeper in the earth, and logically the newer fossils are found in the higher strata. Scientists have found that up in the higher strata, fossils were generally more complex. And basically, since they could see sequences of fossils that have been found that have shown graded and gradual changes, they are able to determine that one organism has evolved from another one. Next, I'll be talking about comparative anatomy. First, there is homology, or homologous structures. Scientists sometimes compare similar structures within common ancestors to determine ancestry. So, for example, they'll look at the vertebrate five-finger forelimb. So humans use it for grasping, bats for flying, penguins for swimming, and amphibians for walking. This doesn't mean that we evolved in sequence, but it does mean that we at one point shared a common ancestor in our history. In contrast to homologous structures, there are also analogous structures. So the difference here are that we're not talking about organisms evolving from common ancestors. We're talking about organisms that evolved with a similar structure because of its environment. So, for example, we know that sharks and porpoises both have flippers. The shark never left the water, so it's natural it had the flippers, but the porpoise has descended from a four-legged vertebrate that evolved into mammals, but this later returned to the seas. So we see that despite their similarities, they're not from a common ancestor. The last part of comparative anatomy deals with vestigial features. So these are structures that have no current function, but are homologous to functional structures in related organisms. So, for example, in the humans, the appendix or the tailbone or our ear muscles that we no longer use, or even in whales, the pelvic bone they used to have, or the rudimentary leg bones, or the pelvic girdle in snakes. These are all examples of vestigial features. Another way to support evolution is through embryological studies. By comparing embryos, for example, all the vertebrate embryos proceed through basically very, very similar stages of development. This is because all vertebrate embryos have the same basic genetic plan for their development. So, turtles, chickens, mice, humans, they all develop tails and gill arches early on in embryonic development, but they don't always maintain these structures in life. So basically, the take-home point here is the more similar that the organism goes through the stages of their embryo, the more related they are in their evolution. More recently, scientists have been using genetics and biochemistry as a way of not only proving evolution, but using it as a tool to map out the time between evolution. So they do this by comparing DNA and RNA, and also the amino acid comparisons. So organisms or species that are more closely related will share a similar genetic code, and by that logic also a protein sequence. I hope this video has helped clear some things up and help get you started on your studies with evolution. Best of luck.